there's no blame, there's no anything. If you look at what happened to Steve Scalise, that was from a supporter of a different party. You look at what happened on numerous of these incidents, they were supporters of others.
Could you do something differently in the way that you engage politically?
I think so. I think that we're running a great campaign. People love what we're doing. They love what we're saying.
Trump moments ago saying he is in no way to blame for this problem we've had, the nationwide manhunt for packages and bombs sent to now 14 targets, culminating in an arrest today. Authorities taking bombing suspect Cesar Sayoc into Florida custody. President Trump responding, though, by condemning the violence in his prepared remarks, but then he quickly defaulted to attacking the free press.
We must never allow political violence to take root in America. Cannot let it happen. And I'm committed to doing everything in my power as president to stop it. Americans must unify, and we must show the world that we are united together in peace and love and harmony as fellow American citizens. Come to think of it, who gets attacked more than me? I can do the greatest thing for our country, and on the networks and on different things, it will show bad. They will take it back because fake news.
Trump also claimed today he wouldn't name any specific news organization, the bomber, of course, targeting CNN in New York. But this week, Trump has been attacking CNN by name and publicly lamenting that this whole story could hurt him politically, writing that the bomb threat could hurt the Republicans in the midterms. Few presidents have ever said something like that in public, lamenting a security scare that could risk Americans' lives would simply hurt them politically. The president's comments also come as we're still learning the extent of the bombing suspect's activities. His public postings and other threats may not have been acted on. For example, Sayoc posted violent rhetoric about many famous figures, Joe Biden and Eric Holder, and at people involved in politics. Just this month, he wrote a threat on Twitter to Rochelle Ritchie, a political analyst who worked for a Democratic congressperson. Sayoc alluded to a silent boat ride, writing, "Hug your loved ones real close every time you leave your home." Rochelle Ritchie joins me live here on the beach. She says the bomb suspect was threatening her. That was as recently as 2 weeks ago, and it was after an appearance she made on another network. She's currently a political analyst and a former press secretary for House Dems. I'm also joined by writer Jelani Cobb from The New Yorker. How do you feel tonight watching the arrest of this man who you now know threatened you this month?
Well, I'm angry. I'm very angry. And I think that it is time for us to turn down the rhetoric. The clip that you played where the president was saying he's willing to do everything in his power to make sure that, we don't have this political violence. He's willing to do everything except for change his own tone, except for change his own rhetoric. And that is very frustrating for me. When I found out that I had been contacted by this bombing suspect, I was livid and I was scared. I was not only scared for myself, but I was also scared for my family. And I think what people fail to realize is that these packages are going to politicians and high-profile celebrities. However, what's not happening is that these packages are not being opened by President Obama, right? They're not being opened by Hillary Clinton. Average Americans like myself, their staff, their assistants are opening these packages. My mail's not vetted through the Secret Service to determine if there's anthrax or a pipe bomb inside of it. And I live in Manhattan.
Why do you think he targeted you?
I have no idea. I know on that day, he wrote me on October 11th, and on that day I was making some comments about Kanye West. And so I'm not sure if that is what sparked him to contact me. I know I've done some commentary on other more conservative networks, so I'm not sure if that was it, but it was after an appearance that I had on a conservative network. And I'm used to this. I'm used to being called the N-word, the B-word, or whatever. I don't care. But when you start to threaten my life and you talk about throwing my body in the Everglades,
you're talking about the difference.
That's the difference
between rhetoric and this cognizable threat by a person who now we know is taking action. Stay with me, Jelani. I want to play for you the way Donald Trump has mainlined and encouraged violence as a political movement. Take a look.
Would you yourself pledge to tone down the rhetoric for the next few days?
Well, I think I've been toned down. You want to know the truth. I could really tone it up because, as you know, the media has been extremely unfair to me and to the Republican Party. Getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of him, would you? Seriously. He's walking out like big high fives, smiling, laughing, like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Get him out. Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it. When you see these thugs being thrown into the back of a paddy wagon, you just see them thrown in, rough. I said, please don't be too nice. Any guy that can do a body slam, he's my kind of...
Right. Yeah. This is the logical extension of the kind of campaign that he ran. And there's a theme here, kind of consistently, that when an incident like this happens, he makes the pro forma necessary statement of, oh, this is terrible. But soon he kind of defaults back to the norm. And so you notice that he was very ambivalent, and then under pressure, he said some things about the murder, the horrific murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And then he couldn't resist going back to criticizing media again. And then in the midst of this, we're seeing that people who've been targeted have all been targeted. If we look in his Twitter feed, these are all people who found their way into his crosshairs on social media, and then someone is acting on this. And we've seen consistently his presidency has been one in which he's engaged with all of the rights, none of the responsibilities. And so if anything goes wrong, as opposed to the buck stops here, it's not my fault. I'm being wrongly blamed. And so this is a kind of, what is the presidency if not a person who sets the moral and social and cultural tone of the moment in which they preside? So he's either inept and weak if he has nothing to do with this context, or he's irresponsible and refusing to take responsibility for what he has in partly inspired.
Yeah, responding to that, you know, I, as a former reporter, as someone who worked as a press secretary for Congress, I try to, as much as I can, be responsible in the way in which I frame my comments, even if I disagree with someone that may have more conservative views. And it's unfortunate that I am able to do that as someone who is not the president of the United States, and yet we have a president who is incapable of doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. He clearly lacks leadership. And I also want to say that I did report this to Twitter. A lot of people asked me about that. I did report it to Twitter, and Twitter responded to me and told me that the language that they saw was not abusive behavior. And now, since right before coming onto your show, after I had tweeted the photo, they have now sent me a message that said this was sent in error, that their previous message of saying this was not abusive was sent in error, and now they realize that this language was abusive, and they've since suspended his account. But this is the thing: is it going to take a bomb going off? Is it going to take my body or someone else's body being in the Everglades in order for these social media accounts to take what we're saying seriously? And look, this is not just Democratic commentators that are receiving these sort of threats. Conservatives are as well, and it's not okay on either side. I do not agree with harassing, following, punching people in the face. I don't agree with any of it.
But a public direct action is not morally or legally equivalent, even if it might be in someone's face, quote unquote, to the violence that we're seeing right now.
No, absolutely not. But there is a language, there's a long established law around incitement. Like, we do believe that words that you express have some sort of correlation to people's actions. Right. Now, beyond that, I think that resorting to political violence is self-defeating and extremely dangerous, but we're not looking at an even-handed scenario here. As a matter of fact, when studies have been done, we've seen, I think the most recent one said that 2/3 of the political violence in this country has been right-wing extremism. And there's a kind of narrative around right-wing terrorism that we don't realize that there's this stream that goes from Dylann Roof to the copycat people who were inspired by Dylann Roof. If he murdered 9 African Americans in the church in Charleston in 2015, through Charlotte, it runs through Charlottesville into what we're seeing now. And for a minute, I think we have to actually just be very clear and specific in our language. We are dealing with attempts at political assassination in the United States. Yeah. And when that happens, you open up an entirely different set of political circumstances.
And look at what just happened in Kentucky, where the guy walked into the grocery store and shot a man in the back of the head. My family is in Lexington, Kentucky, not too far from Jeffersontown, which is right outside of Louisville, Kentucky. And this man walked in and shot a black man in the back of the head because he was black. And that is where we are in this country.
And that's why when we talk about hate crimes mattering because of the target, when we talk about the political violence that is targeting as a matter of intent and that kind of terrorism, because that's an ingredient of it, that's so important. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.